Hello and welcome back to TIM-DND, where we talk about all things Dungeons and Dragons. Today I'm going to review a small box of terrain. It's Dirt Cheap Dungeons Cavern tiles. I say tiles. Dirt Cheap Dungeons Cavern. This is their Goblin set, which is the smallest set they do. I bought it because I didn't want to have to craft cavern tiles. And I was actually really impressed with it. So I'm going to review it. I'm going to review the pros and the cons of the set. Just talk a little bit about the painting I've done on it. And we'll go from there. Let's see what they look like. So as you can see, this box contains a bag with loads of bits and pieces in, and loads of different wall tiles, all of which fit in the box quite easily, stand up fairly freely without too much hassle. There's different sizes, different shapes, end pieces, doors, gates, tiny pieces, longer pieces, and curved pieces. What I'll do is I'll lay out a typical cave that I might use in a game, and we'll talk about it a bit further from there. So this is a typical cave you might set up. As you can see, there's clips which hold the wall sections together. In the setup, there's loads of different walls, different shapes. There's stalagmites, stalactite columns, so that you can show a little bit of the height of the cave, perhaps, and just indicate where the two things join up. There's little skull piles. It scales reasonably well to a 28mm model. Causes a bit of problem when you add in an ogre. Obviously, if you're planning a larger encounter, you might want to space out some of your extra bits a little bit more. And I think for a relatively cheap set, it gives you enough pieces to do quite a lot with. I will say this took me a little while to set up. It's not something you want to create at the tabletop. I don't think it's something you could. Certainly, this set you couldn't use as to create a full dungeon and then run that, covering the areas up bit by bit. I think you'd run out of tiles, walls pretty quickly for that sort of thing, and the areas you'd create would be quite tight. However, if you run the sort of game I do, where you bring out the battle map for the encounters that you may have planned for, I think this works quite well. I've got loads of pieces left over from my little box of tricks. So I've got all these walls left over. I've still got all the door walls because I wanted to create a cave rather than anything which had been lived in by sentient beings. But the door walls are cool. They've got little doors which open. And you could replace these doors with the gates, although I haven't painted those. And again, you've got a small door, again with like iron barred gate if you wanted to create a prison cell in the cave, or a normal door if you want to create that door in the cave. Secret doors, there's nothing secret about these. In fact, the doorways look like they've got brick details in them to suggest that some creature has bricked up the cave entrance and then put the door in. But there's no reason why you couldn't have a plan for a secret door to be in amongst this cave system somewhere, and then if the characters find it, you remove the wall section and replace it with another corridor leading off. that's all doable. In fact, I could probably do something like that quite simply now. Simply by removing a wall section, which I hadn't planned for here. So but if I remove this wall section, for instance, let's do that quickly. I could then place a wall there and say there's a hidden area behind there, which leads to whatever you've got planned in your dungeon. Dirt cheap dungeons make their plastic out of a half recycled material, so I think there's actual dirt in their plastic, which means that from a environment perspective, this works really well. It also means that the plastic they have is quite textured. So all I did when painting these was I don't know how well you can see this on the camera. All I did was literally dry brush the brown plastic with a couple of shades of like a tan colour, and that's where I left it. These are going to be moved about, they're going to be clipped and unclipped. I don't see the need to paint vast amounts of detail into the model. I believe dirt cheap caverns and dungeons specifically state that these tape paint very well, and they can be cleansed with spirits and what have you to get rid of the paint if you want to go for a different style. I haven't tried that out, so that's at the moment I'm quite happy with this paint scheme. So let's see if there's other things we can do with this, and I'll come back in just a second. So our same ogre encounter in a cavern. This time I've added one of the doors, which is a prison cell where he's keeping his larder. So maybe I'd add a few skulls or whatever outside where the remains of his previous foods have been. Characters obviously want to try and rescue whoever's left in the larder, possibly one of their companions. I've added in these glowing crystals, which I've been crafting recently. They literally use these little balloon lights. Oh, God, poor V. These little balloon lights, which literally sit on, they last a long while and you can get them really cheap. So they are my new favourite friend when it comes to crafting interesting terrain. So I've painted these the same brown as the cavern and then dry brushed them very similarly, so they fit in well with the caves. And as you can see, you can just create more and more different little mazes and twists and turns out of these tiles. The larger sets do have more of the same thing. I think there are some adaptation things that you can get as well. What I will say about these walls is they don't give you any real aspect of any real ability to have levels with the tiles. I know there are some versions of Dirt Cheap Dungeons where they've got castles and things, and they use plastic sheeting to go above the walls. But I don't feel you could really do that incredibly well with these walls. I've been thinking of adding some polystyrene, basically levels which can sit on top of here, and then the walls can sit on top of those to give you a sort of a more naturalistic raised and fulled cavern flooring, which I will almost certainly be doing. I feel probably the best way of doing that is to make it so it's roughly the height of a wall with maybe some steps down, and then obviously the walls can then sit on top of that. it does mean that you end up with what's the best way to show this? You'll end up with a section which sits like that, but there are ways around that with this set, and I will work on that and see if I can't show that in another video. Um, all in all, I think these sets are very worth the money. I've got endless different variations for one board that I can do with this set. If I wanted to have several encounters in the same cave layout, I would probably end up having to have a couple of boards worth of terrain to bring out different encounters as the players go further down into the caves. Or at the very least, I'd have to call a break before the next encounter to give me 10 minutes just to set up the next cave system. Which is the one problem with these. I mean, they're not super difficult to set up, but I think if you want a very specific layout, if you've mapped certain things, then yeah, you need that little bit of time to play about with the clips and work out the best um, um, walls to use to make the curves and the layout you want. But as I say, for an encounter in a cave that you want to bring out, you can set this all up in advance, have it behind your screen or wherever you use to hide things from your players. Bring it out, place it on the table, and boom, there you go. And I think most players would be quite excited about this sort of a thing. It gives you plenty of terrain to hide behind, um, run around because you can go back down corridors, lead the ogre down, and someone can sneak round to rescue the prisoners. You name it. People can come up with things based on this terrain layout. Um, and, that's what terrain is all about. Just helping your players imagine what's in front of them and come up with great strategies to mess up your plans. Um, so that's Dirt Cheap Dungeons. I don't think there's much more I need to say about this at the moment. I would say that for beginning dungeon masters, one of these sets is a great way to start with your scenery collection. If you just want to start off cheaply and succinctly, getting a little bit of terrain for your tabletop. Yeah, I think all in all, good bargain. Anyone who looks at my number of subscribers will know that there is no way that Dirt Cheap Dungeons have offered me anything to advertise their product. I'm just quite happy with this product and happy to say that it's a good buy. That's it from me, guys. I'll see you in the next one.